I want to welcome you today to our next webinar presentation with Melissa Forziat, 20 Ways to Market Your Business. We're always happy to have Melissa join us. She presents to our Arkansas Small Business Technology Development Center participants on a regular basis. We're here in Fayetteville at the University of Arkansas. If you're not familiar with us, we work with clients with startups or existing businesses who want to grow, all the way through to buying and selling a business. And it is at no cost to our clients. We are grant funded and always happy to help you either start or grow your business. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Melissa today for this presentation. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you very much for that, Julie. And first of all, as Julie just mentioned, this is one of many webinars we've done together now, maybe almost monthly over the last few years. So it's absolutely great to be back. A huge thank you to the University of Arkansas SBTDC for putting this on, to Julie and Mary Beth for getting everything organized for this. And, it's nice to be back with this group because I know it's always so fun with an active chat. And looking forward to that today as well. So for those who haven't seen me present before, I'll give you just a little bit of background on me so that maybe you have a little more context going into this presentation. I actually started out in my career doing major international sport events. I worked Olympic Winter Games, I worked Rugby World Cup, worked with the US Olympic Committee. So these are some of the biggest brands in the world and some of the most recognizable events. And that's where I cut my teeth. That's where I really saw marketing happening on a big scale. And then about 10 years ago, I started my own business. I am a micro business owner. I work mostly with micro business owners. And, I realized that we have different resources that we're working with. We certainly don't have the same resources that an Olympic Games would have, but we still have to be effective at how we market. So for me, it's all about being practical. It's all about being logical and being efficient with resources when you think about how you're going to market your business. So with a presentation like this today, this one is a bit different from some of the other ones that we do where we look a little deeper into a specific topic. This is the opposite of that. This is meant to be just broad strokes, big ideas of different ways that you can market your business, hoping that it sparks some ideas for you, or maybe you can take ideas and combine them. And, it's my thought here is that everybody who's listening, I don't expect you to be able to use all of these ideas right now. It's really, can you find one or two that you can use right now? Do you have another one or two maybe you could put in your back pocket for later? And it's something that you can just have in mind and find a way to start working it into your marketing plan. So if you come away with even a couple that feel right to you, then I consider that a success, and you can start to go forward and think about how you want to use it. And we can even, address questions about that towards the end if there's anything that you want to get more thoughts on or explore a little bit more for your specific business. So that is how we'll approach this today. Now, a few quick housekeeping items first. Everybody here is on mute right now except for me and Julie, but I do encourage you to, on your end, minimize whatever distractions might be happening. So if the ringer is on your phone, if there are any messaging devices on in the background, this is a great time to shut those down, because we're talking big ideas today, and this is going to make a lot more sense if you're really thinking about your business while we're talking about these things. Use this as a time to really be present for thinking about the marketing of your business and asking yourself, is this idea something that can work for me? And if you do that, with each idea as it's presented, you'll probably come away with a much more useful list of things that'll work for you by the end. Now, if you do have any ideas that you feel like you want to work with, you may want to look back at this slide deck later. So I just wanted you to know that I am going to be sending a link to this whole slide deck to Julie to be able to email out to all of you at the end of this. And in addition to that, you'll have the recording. Obviously, we're taking a recording of this session, so you'll be able to get all of this information back later. If you feel like you're rushing to take notes, maybe just take a moment, take a deep breath, and listen in a little bit more closely and use that as a chance to reset, because you'll be able to watch all of this back later. And then in terms of questions, I think the best way to do this will be to take questions at the end, but if you have questions as we go through, we'll do our best to spot them. But we are carving out time at the very end to take your questions. There will be times when I ask you questions as well. And if that ever happens, feel free to put your responses in the chat. Make sure your chat is set to everyone right now. And in fact, while we're doing that, let's go ahead and hear from all of you. I've introduced myself, so feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Again, make sure it's set to everyone. Let us know what your business is, name of your business and what it does. And who knows, maybe you'll find somebody else who's attending this session who could be a good collaborator for you and maybe carry out some of these ideas. So I'll give you an opportunity to do that, hopefully meet each other a bit and set up what we're going to be doing today in the content itself. So first of all, what I like to be able to do with something like this, especially when we've got a bunch of different types of businesses in the room, is talk about some of the realities of business community building. And, you know, there are going to be certain challenges and certain, you know, just realities that all of us are dealing with as small business owners, that it's important to acknowledge it before we talk about marketing, because a lot of times the people who are talking about marketing are not accounting for some of those realities. So we're really going to be calling them out up front and then focusing in on how we're going to be addressing that with all of the ideas that we present today. Then I'm going to start presenting those 20 different marketing ideas, and they're going to be grouped into these 3 categories. We've got advertising and event opportunities. We've got partnership marketing, and we got brand ambassadors. And something you may notice as we go through is that you can make a case for many of these things to be put in more than one category. So I just sort of planted a flag with each of them to give you a framework to think about them. And we'll just take it from there, right? You know, a good idea can potentially cross over into more than one of these areas, and that's fine. It's really just starting to think about the sense of place and the sense of opportunity that it gives you. It's great to see people starting to introduce themselves in the chat. If you find anybody in there that feels like a potential partner for you, don't hesitate to reach out and find a way to connect after this as well, because I am going to be presenting a lot of ideas here where collaboration is a fair game and maybe even makes the ideas better. So before we jump in, are you in the right place? Let's just double check on that. So this material is designed for you if you're looking for a variety of ways to market your business. Maybe you've been doing 1 or 2 things and you want to add some new ideas, some new platforms, some new forums into the mix. This material, though, is also for you if you want to really focus on creating a community around your business. You know, if you're really looking at what is the network that sits around my business and how can I tap into it more? How can I foster it more? Also, this material is for you if you're looking for ways to find more opportunity through word of mouth. You know, if you're really looking to stoke the conversation happening around your business, whether or not you're there to engage in it directly, a lot of these ideas are things that are going to give you sort of a backdrop for more conversation to happen about your business. And the question is, how can you leverage it? So those are all some techniques that we're going to be working on, all some goals that we're going to be trying to achieve today. Let's jump in. If you're in the right place, I'm glad you're here. Let's talk about 20 ways to market your business. All right, first things first, realities of business community building. Like I said, to me, this is an important way to start because I've often noticed that when marketers are talking to small businesses, especially really small businesses, like a lot of us probably have, they aren't always accounting for some of the challenges that we face. And they're often talking about ideas that much bigger companies would be more likely to implement. And so for me, it's about getting up to speed, making sure that the ideas presented are applicable. And you'll find that there's a range of ideas that are going to be presented today. Depending on where you are in your business right now, different ideas may work for you, but you know, all of it is taking into account the challenges that many of us face. Now, let's talk a little bit about who this presentation is really designed for. You know, they say that about 90% of all US businesses are what we would call micro businesses. And that would be, the definition is 1 to 9 employees, but I would actually put that at under 10 employees. This is a small business administration definition. And to me, the distinction there is actually important because sometimes we have businesses where we're sole proprietors or we're single owner LLCs, and we aren't even an employee of our own business, but you still have a business. And so if we're looking at under 10 employees, that would be what we call a micro business. And, for as dominant and a bracket as the small business category is, the reality of that category is that the Small Business Administration definition of small business is businesses with up to 499 employees. That's really quite a lot of employees. And when you think about the way businesses like that are structured and maybe the type of budget they're working with and the type of infrastructure they have, the operational processes that they have in place, there's probably going to be a lot more in place for a business up to 499 employees. But we really need to make sure that when we talk about marketing, we're also accounting for what will look for this group, the under 10 employee group. And I'm just curious, for those of you who are here with me live, go ahead and write in the chat, if you fall into this micro business category, because I'm curious to see kind of what the makeup is in this group. And if you feel like you're in another category, maybe let us know what that is. So far, I'm getting a whole host of yeses of people who resonate with the micro business definition. So far, everybody does. But if you fall into another category, go ahead and tell us that so I can sort of make sure to tailor that to you as well. I will say that if you had a bigger business, if you had more employees in your business, you can still do all the things that we talked about today. You probably have a lot more options available to you that you're working with. But again, if you fall into this category, you have to know that the advice that you're getting is implementable. And so, I want you to understand that that's where this is coming from today. Now, when you're in this category, what can it feel like to run a business? I have to say, we're often all in our own little silos, our own, I like this picture because it's sort of like everybody's in their own little room here. But the thing is, we're all dealing with the same challenges and the same problems, just not always having other people to communicate with about it. A lot of times we're struggling with, we're wearing so many hats and we're trying to get all the different facets of our business done in a day. Many of us are in charge of multiple functional areas of our business at once. And so it's like whatever seems to be the most pressing thing that day is the most pressing thing on your to-do list. And that's it. And if that's HR or if that's marketing or if that's, inventory or whatever it is for you, everything else seems to take a back seat to whatever's the most pressing thing on the plate that day. And yet, we all need to somehow still focus on marketing. And the other challenge I often find for this group is, look, we don't have the budget of an Olympic Games to market our businesses, nor do we have the number of personnel to be able to spread word of mouth from within. And so, we still have to find a way to make it work, even with some of these restrictions. And one of the other challenges is that marketing is not something that most people come into their business with a deep knowledge about. It's something that we learn on the fly, and it's not a fixed skill set. It's something that takes creativity. There's always new options available to you, and the landscape is always shifting. And so these are some of the things that we're really having to think about. But I'd like to simplify this for you by saying, to me, marketing is about putting your business where your target market is in a way that they can grasp your message. And hopefully you're there long enough where you can get their attention and start a conversation. So if it's really just about getting in front of your target market, then you have to start thinking about where your target market is. And hopefully today's conversation will illuminate some ideas for you that maybe you hadn't considered about places where your target market might be, or ways that you can get your message in front of them. So these are all things that we're looking at today, and we're going to do it for a few different categories of lead generation. So we're going to look at advertising and event opportunities. We're going to look at partnership marketing, and we're going to look at brand ambassadorship. And, again, you'll see some crossover between these different areas, but I really like to think about efficiency when you're dealing with limited budget, when you're dealing with limited time, when you really have to be mindful of your resources. How can you squeeze every last drop out of every relationship that you build for your business? That is what is at the center for today's conversation. One other distinction that I'll make here, which is why I sort of focus on this realities piece first, is that a lot of times when people are talking about marketing opportunities that larger small businesses have, or mid-sized businesses or corporations, they'll be looking at how do you market by numbers? How can you quantitatively reach as many people as possible? Because if you reach as many people as possible, some percentage of them will be low-hanging fruit and will want to take up your offer, will want to accept your call to action. So there are a lot of people who provide marketing advice coming from this place of, if you just reach enough people one time, you can get, some percentage of people, enough of a percentage of people that you're generating some revenue. The philosophy that I like to look at this from is relationship building. So if you were to meet 100 of the right people, while that may not be a really large number, if you were to stay in front of that 100 people as many ways as you can for as long as possible, can you get more of those people to eventually accept your call to action over time than, the types of percentages we would have seen with just one message to a really large audience. So for me, I encourage you to think about, as you build relationships through any of the strategies we talk about, how can you then employ other strategies? How can you stay in front of those same people so that you're building a deep relationship and not just a breadth? That's where the efficiency comes in. So that's a lot of philosophy for you. And hopefully that makes you feel like you have a sense of where this advice is going to be coming from today, where these suggestions are going to be coming from today. And let's dive into it. Now let's sort of graze the surface of all the different marketing ideas that we want to present today. And let's see which ones will resonate for you. First, let's look at the advertising and event opportunities space. So the first one I want to mention, this can go by a variety of different names, but this could be things like walking guides, maybe local walking guides, maybe directories. It could be for your city. It could be for any specific category of businesses. It could be for any community that you're sitting within could have its own type of directory. Also, there are online marketplaces of varying natures that you could use. Could be statewide, could be local, could be industry-based. So this category could be printed guides, or it could be online directories. And it's really about saying, where is my target market looking? Where are they going to be looking for information, and how can I make sure that I have a presence there? Sometimes these things are paid opportunities where you have to pay a membership fee or pay a certain fee up front in order to be listed. Sometimes they're things where if you just ask, you'll get mentioned. So that's something that you can look at. I often also like to use directories as a shopping list for potential partnerships. So that's something that you can do as well, even if you aren't necessarily actually listed in the directory or walking guide. But start thinking about what opportunities there might be like this for your business that might be useful to you in reaching your audience. Now, another one here is more, let's go into some event-based ones, which the first one I'm going to put here is something like a wine or a beer tasting or a happy hour. It can be something that you host at a local establishment where you're bringing a group of people there. And so maybe there are other patrons who aren't part of your group who discover your business through that. Or if you have a brick and mortar, maybe you host something like this on site. Maybe you get a banquet license for a day or something like that, so that you can sell or provide alcohol, whatever the rules are in your area. And you can actually host something, and you can make this an event that brings people to your location and perhaps gives people a reason to invite a friend. You know, if you're going to do something like this, and encourage people to invite other people in their network if you can. Make your invitations shareable so that they know to bring people in. So you can do this either way. You don't have to have a brick and mortar to do this. You can develop a relationship with another establishment, and you can see if you can host something like this at their location. So if you have a service-based business where you don't have a brick and mortar, that could be an option for you as well. Don't discount it just because you don't have the location. Now, this one is probably more relevant for brick and mortars, to do something like an art walk or an art display. Now, art walks tend to be something that is more coordinated amid a whole hyperlocal area. A lot of times this involves, you know, maybe a downtown area or an area where there's a bunch of shops located within a short walking distance, where you can encourage a bunch of different shop owners to have art displays inside their venues. And then it becomes an activity for people to do where they can explore all of the different art displays. That's something that you can do if you have a brick and mortar and have a bunch of people in your area who are interested in doing the same thing. But if not, you can just do art displays at your location. I've seen this done by a number of businesses where they'll often do like a 1 month at a time rotating display. So it'll give different artists a chance to invite their whole community to your location. I often see this type of thing with coffee shops, for example, if they have wall space. And the beautiful thing about that is if you do it on a rotating basis, then every time you get a new artist, they're being encouraged to invite their community to it for their opening, and maybe new people are discovering your location for that reason. So this can be something that you leverage. If you have a business that doesn't have a physical location, I suppose you could do something like this with your, you know, online presence as well. And there's a lot of different types of businesses you can shout out if you want to do that. But, you know, just take the base of this idea and see if it works for what you do. Now, another option that you have is the meet and greet format. Now, again, if you have a brick and mortar, you can do this on your location. If you don't, is this something that you can host and you can partner with another establishment that does have a physical location, and you coordinate something that a wider community can enjoy. Now, the idea with the meet and greet is that this is the draw, right? Where we were saying the art or the happy hour sort of atmosphere would be the draw for some people. The meet and greet is the idea that the central component to why people are coming is that you have brought somebody they want to talk to or meet into the room. Now, this can be somebody who's a local presence, maybe it could be a local political figure or a local influencer, or it could be, you know, just somebody who has some cachet in your community, and somebody that your target market may very well want to have access to. And, you know, the more businesses you have collaborating on something like this, the more worthwhile somebody may feel it is to contribute to something like this in this way and to be your sort of key figure. So think about, you know, how you might want to leverage this. If you do want to do it, I encourage you to get involved with other businesses in making it happen, because at the end of the day, it's going to end up not only being more attractive to the person who's the host of the meet and greet, but it's also going to be more profitable in terms of the number of new contacts you can potentially make at that location. Now, another type of campaign here, and this can be done online, this can be done on site. There are a lot of different ways to leverage this. So we're going to pull in a couple of sort of cousin ideas here over the next couple of ideas. So discount days would be one. Discount days are, you know, if you've specifically called out a specific day and said on this day, for whatever reason, there's going to be a set discount on all merchandise, all products, all services, or just certain components that you have. Now, this can be tied to something that people already know about. It could be a national holiday. It could be a holiday that's specific to the theme of your business, but it can also be, you know, something that you invent and you decide on. You know, sometimes people will do this around milestones for their business. So there's a lot of options here, but it's the idea that you're going to give this sort of draw. When you're doing discounts, of course, you need to be mindful that you may be attracting people who are discount shoppers and they're looking for discounts all the time. So when you use strategies like this, make it really clear what your normal price range is and that today there is a markdown, because you want people to have a real sense of what the actual value of your products or services should be. Just be mindful of the clientele you're attracting with the discount days, but sometimes you can invite people in through something like this and they can develop a love for your products and services that lasts far beyond the day itself. Now, another example of this would be something like a free sample day. This is something that I remember when I was in college, the local Ben and Jerry's used to do this, and they would be absolutely flooded for a day, and it really put them on the map for everybody in the area. And I think it was a smart idea for them because there was a rotating base of people coming in every year. It was a college setting, so there was always new students coming in. So this was something that really allowed them to put themselves, like I said, on the map for their community and establish that goodwill. But obviously Ben and Jerry's is this huge business. So the question is this something that would be sustainable for you to do? You have to look at your bottom line when you have an idea like this to see if this would be something that you can actually implement. Now, another option that you might have if you like the idea, but you're not in a position to just give away a lot of stuff, what about combining forces with a nonprofit? So for example, you might, and you could do this once a month if you wanted to. You could, establish relationships with nonprofits in your area who have a base of their own. You could talk to their development director and see if you can establish a partnership of some sort where you're drawing attention to their nonprofit for a day, to your entire community. Or in addition to that, you can also have that promoted within their community, maybe through their newsletters and their social media, so that people become aware of your business. And this can be something that you do online or on site. So you have all those options. If you're able to, you could provide a special discount for the folks from that nonprofit if you want to, or you can have a percentage of proceeds going back to that nonprofit, or it can just be something where you're raising awareness for that nonprofit. But the idea is that, can you have it so that the nonprofits community is becoming aware of your business and your business's community is becoming aware of that nonprofit. Even just by itself, that relationship can already be really beneficial from the cross-marketing standpoint. But if you can actually build in an incentive somewhere in there for people to visit your location and buy things from you on that day, it's just a matter of like what you can get, what kind of agreement you can get from the development manager. Now, to take it to a slightly more general idea here, you can have just your basic standard networking event. It doesn't have to have fancy bells and whistles. It can be that you're hosting a networking event. Now, this is most likely to be an on-site sort of opportunity. So this is especially good if you have a brick and mortar, but we can do online networking as well. There are ways to do that. Obviously Zoom is a platform that many of us are familiar with now. And so the question becomes, can you create an environment where, you have that networking opportunity, maybe structured if it's something like a Zoom format. But can you get those conversations going with people within your group? So it's not necessarily dangling the carrot of an influencer in your area, or somebody for a meet and greet, but it is focusing on the relationships that people can build for their own businesses or their own communities. So with all of these ideas, I would say, especially with like the advertising and event ideas, you have to be really thoughtful about your budget and resources up front before you start planning, because that will really help you set the structure and the limits. Hopefully you're already starting to see that with the ideas that we're talking about now, there is a range of how you can implement them. So there are many different ways to implement some of these ideas, some that require more outlay of money by you and some that require less, some that could be pared back to just cross marketing, and some that can be full scale events. And so really think about where you sit right now from a budget standpoint, from a time standpoint. Events in particular are more complex ways to market your business. There's a lot of potential gain and marketing opportunity there for you when you organize an event, especially if you do it with another business or more than one business, but it takes time to organize them. It's a lot of logistics to plan, and it often takes some amount of money to run them as well. So think about what you're dealing with in terms of budget and resources, start there, and then look for the ideas here that you can use or adapt accordingly. Now, if you find that because of that, some of these ideas that we've already mentioned don't work as well for you, or if they do work, but you want to find a way to up-level them, partnership marketing is something that I really like to focus on with pretty much all businesses, not just micro businesses. I think every business can benefit from finding other businesses to collaborate with that are reaching a similar target market. So let's put a definition to this. Partnership marketing is essentially collaborating with other businesses or influencers for mutual benefit. And it's this idea that you're going to look for some sort of commonality. Usually we're looking for a common target market. You usually don't. Sometimes you can look at competitors as partners. A lot of times it's easier if we're looking for businesses that are reaching our audience without having an overlap in services or products with what our business does. So this is the type of thing that there's probably a whole world of businesses out there that you could connect with. Now, if you have an online business, it kind of opens up the whole world to you. You don't necessarily have to look in your hyper-local area for a partner if you don't want to. But if you have a brick and mortar business and you really want to focus on local partnerships, you can do that as well. So how do you go about building a strong partnership? Well, first of all, define who you're looking for. What would be the right fit for you? Seek those people out. Are you looking for compatibility of target market? Are you looking for compatibility of offerings? Maybe you're looking for businesses that might have a target market overlap, but look different from yours. For example, if you have a micro business, but you can find a nonprofit to collaborate with, although your businesses don't necessarily look alike from a structural standpoint, you can both bring something to the table from a cross-marketing standpoint. This may even be true of bigger companies in your area, for example, or perhaps universities. You can really look at the different ways to leverage collaboration and get creative with how can we both bring that common interest to the table. That's the second part of this. You don't have to be offering each other the exact same thing, but you do both have to be getting some sort of benefit out of this. So, for example, if you said to somebody, let's do a feature on each other in our next newsletter, that might get a quicker yes than if you said, I want you to sponsor my business, because that's a more one-sided ask that not everybody is going to be able to carry out. So you're looking for something that is going to be a way both of you can get something out of the relationship. Whether or not you're getting the same thing isn't necessarily relevant. It's just that you're both going to be satisfied and fulfilled with what you're getting. So if you get some businesses that pass that test, that's when you start defining what kind of support would make an impact. So maybe you look through this presentation with the partner, you start running off some of these ideas and say, well, what if we tried this or this or this? And you can start to think tactically about how to move forward with them. The big thing here is that with partnership marketing, you're looking for collaborative, win-win, mutually beneficial relationships. So both sides need to get something from it. Otherwise, it's not likely to last very long. But when they do feel like there's mutual benefit, this is something that, once you've built that relationship, you can keep re-upping those ideas year upon year, or you can start new ideas with each other. And it's just a matter of continuing those conversations. So when we talk about partnership marketing, I'm hoping that you're already seeing that for the ideas, the advertising, and the event marketing ideas we've already discussed, partnership marketing certainly has its place, because any event that you run can be done better with support with other businesses. So that's something that can absolutely be built into the prior ideas, but also there are ideas that are just simply cross-marketing that don't necessarily require a money outlay, that might be easier to get across the line in your earlier days of these relationships. So one would be something like guest blogging. So if you have a blog, for example, this is an opportunity to allow this other business to do a feature, to do a Q&A, to write their own content and to share it on your website. And when you do that, not only are you able to then link their business, but they're now inspired, or they're incentivized to share that content from your website to their audience, thus attracting their audience to your website to discover whatever else you have there. So you could do something like this where it's an exchange and you're each doing something like this for each other. Even if it's just one way, I think there's benefit in it for both parties just by itself. So this is something that you could look at as a baseline to get started. Maybe you don't have a blog. Maybe you send newsletters though. So if you do email marketing to your audience, there's always an opportunity there for you to do a feature on another business for your audience. Do a feature and a little link back to their website or more information about them or whatever their call to action is. That's something that you can offer, and that gives them direct access to your audience. And maybe you ask for the same thing back. So that's something where you can both get that sort of exposure. Now, another one would be social media engagement. You can certainly share your content if that makes any sense for your audience to see that content. Or it could be that you're making an agreement that you're going to go to each other's social media accounts and you're going to, on a regular basis, comment on it or like it or react to it. And all of this is building an improvement to your algorithms to be able to really get more and more visibility, more and more reach for every post that you do. If you had a relationship like this with 10 different businesses, that is a lot of built-in traction that you start to get on all of the content that you put out. And the idea is that they're getting the same thing from you. So social media engagement is just another way to focus on cross-marketing here. You could also go with a slightly more elaborate approach of using, having special hashtags that you're using or doing a themed month together. I've seen some really interesting, a group that I think of when I think of this is like the marketers of zoo associations often do things like this year over year, especially during the pandemic. They were coming up with all these different campaigns, and they would it was like animal of the month or animal of the day. And then they would say, over to you. And they'd pick another zoo around the country and they'd say, who do you want to shout out from the animals in your zoo? And they'd do stuff like that. Another year they did like drawings of animals and renaming body parts with funny names. So that's something where they had a special hashtag around it. They were doing interesting content, and then they were very, very clearly directing the next zoo to take part, and it would draw attention to each one. Now, that's something that they obviously had coordinated in advance in a really smart way. But what can you do? Is there something that you can establish? Maybe you're doing something around a local holiday or a holiday around your business's theme, or maybe it's just something that you invent. So these are ideas that you can start to play with. It does take advanced coordination. These things don't just happen. Now, the collateral leave behind option is another one. If one of the businesses that you're collaborating with is a brick and mortar, maybe you have a brick and mortar, whatever the physical location is there an opportunity for either of you to have collateral, business cards, postcards, rack cards from other companies or other businesses at your location? If so, that's something that, maybe you can both do for each other. So sometimes you'll see this where it's just the leave behinds as they normally are. Sometimes you'll see it where, it's like, okay, I've got my postcards, but I'm going to put a specific discount for people from your business on it if they just say a certain keyword or something like that at the time of purchase. And so that's something where you can somewhat easily manipulate the existing collateral or reprint if you need to. Or it can just be that, these are your business cards or these are your rack cards, and there's just space for you at another location. So depending on what kind of business you're partnering with, that may get more visibility than others. And sometimes even just the verbal referrals go a long way. A business may not necessarily get a lot of traffic, but they have, like, for example, there's a massage therapist that I worked with doing strategies like this. And, she wondered what she brought to the table, but it was like, you may have a small group of people that you work with, but they trust you, like with, they're in your hands, literally. They have conversations with you and you have a lot of sway with them. And so your verbal recommendation may carry a lot of weight. So these are some different things that you can play with, depending on what sort of space is available. Now, another thing that is a bit more elaborate as well is loop giveaways. It's an idea that it might be sort of a contest approach. It's an entry approach. Maybe you give people different tasks that they need, but you're usually collaborating with 5 or 6 or more different businesses. And the idea is that you have to sort of visit each business in order to have access, in order to enter an overall contest. Maybe there's a prize being given away at the end for the people who do all of the actions. And a lot of time with loop giveaways, it's not just visit all 7 locations. It's, business A directs people to business B directs people to business C, and you keep going until every business is included. And then you focus your marketing attention there. So I've seen it done where sort of everybody's promoting everybody, but this is something that's a little bit more circular in trying to get people to each location and really focusing on your marketing attention for one other business. Now, another thing that you can do that is a bit more baked into the structure of your business is the idea of doing joint offerings. Now, there's probably a lot of different ways to implement this, but think about if there's a business out there that does things that your audience definitely needs. I'm going to give you an example here. I think about when I launched my business, and I had questions, I had legal questions, I had banking questions, I had tax questions, but every time I went to the bank, they didn't know anything about the tax stuff or the legal stuff. Anytime I talked to, looked for information about the taxing side of it, they didn't know anything about the other stuff. Applying for the LLC, they didn't know anything about any of the other pieces. So I couldn't help but think how much easier life would have been if I had been connected up front with like a lawyer or an accountant or a banker who had all of those relationships and could have just said to me, oh, you have questions about this? Here's somebody that I can recommend to you, or let me pass you along to this person. Even if it's not like all of them are, it doesn't have to be that they're all sharing revenue, but if they're all giving you recommendations to each other as a consumer, if you need all of those things, your life is being made quite a lot easier to have these introductions. And it's great for the other businesses involved, because every time one of them meets a new customer, that's potential for the others as well. So think about if there's anything like that for your business where people really do need something else. How can you establish those relationships up front, and what can you all commit to? Now, again, this partnership marketing, I'll just put a finer point on it here. The most elaborate thing you can do together as co-marketing partners is a co-hosted event. Anything like what we talked about in the first category, but you can come up with other ideas as well. Events, again, they're the most logistically complex ways to market, but there's also the most opportunity there. So if you can get one or more businesses to say, we're going to share the responsibility of planning the event and we're going to market it to each of our communities, then you're hopefully sharing the responsibilities while getting the absolute most reach and potential new audience for your business as well. So let's look at one more category here, being brand ambassadorship. And you may very well find that you're creating, through all of the things we've already talked about, you may find that you're already creating conversation around your business, and you're already fostering possibilities of people extending invitations or sharing content about your business. But let's look at the idea of brand ambassadors as really looking at, like, thinking about how your clients and your customers are part of your referral network. And this isn't just your relationship with other businesses. This is the people who are perhaps buying things from you or who are in your audience. So they can potentially spread the story of your business, and they're more likely to do it if you've planted ways for them to do that. And they're more likely to do it correctly if you've planted ways for them to do that, because sometimes when word of mouth just goes on its own, you don't really know what people are saying. They may or may not be saying the right thing. So the more you're doing to get in front of this and plant ideas and plant things for them to share, the better off you'll be. And you can start to see the web that we create with this. Like, if a new lead, like let's say you create a partnership, for example, if a new lead believes in your business's reputation, they're much more likely to then buy from the business. And now this customer starts vouching for the business, and the business is now going to share the customer's social proof. The customer is sharing it on their own, and then they attract a new lead, which is going to see some of that evidence that the business is really good, your business is really good, and now they become a new lead for you. So it's this cycle of, can people discover you through the network you've already built, whether that be through customers or clients or some of these partners that you're tapping into. So here's some ideas that just go directly towards, how can I get people talking about my business? Now, one could be something like a monthly photo highlights sort of reel or collage, depending on what format you're using for something like this. Let's say you use something like social media, or let's say you have, you publish this like a blog on your website, and then you can send it out by email, and you can send it out in other formats. It could be something where you have this in your physical location and people want to come visit it. So these are all options that you have, but how can you get this so that people who are in those photos are excited to share it, that they're excited to be featured, and they want people to see your content? It could be that they contribute that content for consideration. Crowdsourced content is a way to get buy-in up front. So these are some options that you have, lots of different ways to implement it. Now, another thing that you can do that can feel more personal is you can come up with a plan, and this may require you setting aside some budget, but you can come up with a plan for acknowledging people when they're having hard times, or when they've had an achievement, or maybe an anniversary of some sort, like maybe a year since they last worked with your business. Or, it could be birthday acknowledgements. So decide what you'd want to do around that. Are you going to give them a gift? Is there some other recognition that you're going to give them? The bigger the deal, maybe the bigger the gift. If it's something that you just want to make them feel good, but you're going to do that with a lot of people, maybe you look at, where is it a card? Is it something where it's a discount for them on the next purchase? What are the ways that you can acknowledge them, but do it within your bottom line? Do it within what you are reasonably able to spend. Now, a more obvious one perhaps would be something like a client or customer interview or a feature. You can do something like a Q&A, or you can do something where you get quotes from them and then build it into a story, or you can do an article about them if you want to do something like that. But this idea of really spotlighting a client or a customer that you think has influence within their own sphere is a way for you to get content out there that people might be likely to share or engage with. And then, of course, if you simplify that idea, just your standard testimonials. This might be the most obvious thing people think of when they think about like creating brand ambassadors, but you can ask people for testimonials, and you can ask them to give you a testimonial that addresses certain types of things, like, Oh, I'd love to have a testimonial from you, especially because, I know how long you were searching for a business that did something like what I did. So, I'd love to know more about your journey. You can sort of help guide them into what would be a useful story for them to tell. And it may help them to craft a more appropriate testimonial for your business. So these are all some things you can then use that in all different types of content. And hopefully that's something they then want to engage with or share with their community as well. So you can see there's a range of ideas here. And I think the brand ambassador piece and the partnership piece, there's a lot of different ideas you can layer on top of each other to make things work bigger, faster, stronger for you. And so it's just looking at, okay, what ideas do I like and can I combine them? Do I use some of them now and some of them later when I have more budget? There's a lot of different ways you can look at something like this, and it's just about finding the potential for the type of business that you run. Now, I do want to make sure we save time for questions here, because I know that this is really, like I said, this was about giving you broad, big ideas, as many of them as possible. And my hope is that you're all starting to think about a couple of ideas that, ooh, okay, this could work for me. So this is a great time to start putting your questions into the chat or into the Q&A, I think Julie asked for. And so we can start addressing them there. Just a reminder, we talked about realities of business community building. We talked about some ideas for advertising and event opportunities, talked a bit about partnership marketing, and we talked about brand ambassadors. And as you get your questions in, I just wanted to put a quick reminder on a couple of our upcoming sessions. We've got one in June and one in July. Next one is going to be Smart Principles of Marketing Messaging, and that's going to be looking more at the different ways. It's a much more example-based. We're going to look at ways that other businesses market and why it works and some of the things that you can start doing for your business. And then in July, we're going to talk about how to create a profitable marketing strategy. That's a 1.5-hour session. It's a really important one to start looking at not only how are you generating leads like we're talking about today, but how do you keep them with you longer until they're ready to become your customers? So having that whole thing mapped out for yourself. So those are some of the upcoming events. And I also, as we take questions here, for anybody who has questions, be sure to get those in for us. But if you want to work directly with the ASB TDC, I've got their link up here as well. And I think that Julie just put that link in the chat for you to learn more. So Julie, let me turn it over to you in case there's anything you want to tell people about here.
Thanks, Melissa. Yes, if you are not currently a client of the ASB TDC at the University of Arkansas, please visit our website that Melissa has on this slide. And at the top right of every page, there's a Get a Consultation button, and just go through that portal and answer a few questions, and someone will call you within the next, I would say, 24 hours to set up an appointment and visit with you about whatever your small business need may be. And I also put in the chat the registration link for all of our events and programs, but especially Melissa's next two marketing presentations. And her presentation's always full of great information, and so I highly encourage you to follow up with those two presentations in June and July.
And we've had a couple people ask the same question privately to us. Yes, the recording has been taken of this session, and Julie's going to be sending this out afterwards. And I am going to send a link to my whole slide deck to Julie. So hopefully all of that can go out to you. If you missed, the thing about this presentation is if you miss a few minutes, you missed entire ideas. That's not usually how my presentations are structured. But again, this was about giving a range of ideas. So I am curious, if anybody does have questions, even if they applied specifically to your business, I think it's interesting for all of us to sort of work through it. So feel free to put those questions into the chat or the Q&A. But also, I'm interested to know, are there any ideas that really resonated for you? I'd love to see from this group, like which things feel most doable to you at this time. So even if you don't have a question about it, it would be fun to see if there's any trends happening there. It looks like we do have a question though here from Katie. Do you have a favorite social media platform that works best for micro businesses? I feel like Instagram is popular here, but it's harder to get click through to businesses. Yeah, that is the trick about Instagram, right? I mean, I do think that Instagram is a platform that gives you comparatively more visibility than some of the other ones do, especially if you use hashtags and especially if you engage every time you're posting, like go to other businesses or other accounts and start interacting with their content. But because of how difficult they make it to get like clickable links, your mileage may vary on how much call to action traffic you actually get with that. I think the answer to this question is going to be really specific to the audience that you're trying to reach. So for example, if you were to tell me that you had a business where you need to be connecting with like people in a businessy way, not just like a wide audience, but maybe you need to be like, maybe you're an HR rep, or maybe you know, LinkedIn would be the most obvious platform for something like that. If you have a lot of video content, maybe you're focusing more on a platform like YouTube or like TikTok, where you can start creating video content that you're leading with. If you've got a lot of image-based content, something like Instagram can be good. Something like Pinterest could be good. But you're tapping into specific target markets with all of those places. And I think it's important to keep the target market at the center of your mind, no matter what type of marketing that you're doing. I would say Instagram, I find, tends to skew a bit younger. Facebook tends to skew a little bit older. I don't know how Twitter's skewing right now. I really... I don't know if any of us know exactly how Twitter is skewing right now. I think that TikTok is kind of new generation. So you really need to be mindful of how who you're trying to tap into with that. You know, we've also had a question from Haley. Do you have any trainings on how to use certain social media platforms? Julie, is there anything coming up on the calendar for that?
So Haley, what I would suggest is go onto our website to the resources page, and we've got a lot of material there. I will send you a link within the email that I send out, and that way you can go to that page, and we've got several things that will be helpful to you.
Awesome. Yeah, great questions. I think, let's see, got a question from Gabby. It might be good to reiterate, Julie, the best way to connect with an advisor.
Yes. Yes. So Gabby, what you would need to do is go through the get a consultation button on the website. If you need particular marketing guidance, we have a person with great marketing expertise on our team that can help you.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think, just to reiterate, if anybody does have any specific questions to their business, we have a couple of minutes to address those. So feel free to pop that into the chat. But I do think, you know, if I could sort of leave you with one thing after leaving you with 50 things, keep your target market at the center. Where is your audience that you're trying to reach? That's really how you, like, any ideas that I've presented today that actually allow you to tap into that audience are the ones that are relevant for you. You know, anything that's reaching a really broad audience, I would say there's more waste in that for you. If you're reaching a huge audience that has nothing to do with your target market, it's not necessarily going to move you forward. So think about who specifically you're trying to reach and which of these ideas help you get to them. And you can get really creative with this to look at that. You know, there are a lot of ways to market a business. Hopefully you're getting a sense of that from this presentation. And, you know, it's all about keeping the relationships you want to build at the very center of what you're doing. So, you know, do the research on where they are and then look at how you can implement some of these ideas to get you there, is what I would say. But
okay, any other questions before we close for Melissa?
Thank you all so much for joining in. I'm so glad you took the time to think about your marketing, and I hope this gave you all some ideas.
Great. Thanks for joining us today. And again, be sure and visit our registration page for the next event, and we will see you then. Thanks again, Melissa.
Bye.